I want to rise up to the macro level because once again, you do sit at the intersection of fintech and financial brands. You see a lot, you have a lot of conversations. Let's look at both sides of the coin. What are some of the trends that you are hearing, seeing about right now in the present moment from the perspective of financial brands? Where's the chatter? Where's the conversation today?
A lot of them, a lot of the financial institutions I talk to today, it's kind of a few things, right? There's I don't know if you want to call it a looming recession, if we've been in a recession, but there's something happening, right? You just saw the student loan staycation, just I forget what they actually called it, but I call it a staycation. That just expired, right? So now we've got all this student loan debt that needs to start being repaid again, right? What's that going to do? That's going to deplete capital in the banks even more because people are now paying their loans back, right? So there's a lot of chatter around that. The credit is tightening even more now, but also from 2019 to 2021, specifically more so, right in the COVID era, these institutions way overspent on technology. They had to, right? They were in a bind. Branches are closing everywhere. They need to have a digital presence. There's all these fly-by-night companies that spun up and started creating some interesting software to help. But now they're just sitting on this stuff. It's on the shelf. Some of it's not being used. It's 3-5 year contract stuff. And so there's a lot of financial institutions that are looking at their technology stack, looking at their contracts. When do they come due? What does this even do for us? Can we utilize it, or should we just ride this out, have it as a sunk cost and move on? And so we're in this really interesting period of time right now where the banks just are, in credit union, they're budgeted, but they're very cautiously moving into the next project because they've got this tech stack that they're just not really fully sure of yet. And when I talk to those institutions, what I like to do is get in there and really help them evaluate, like, what do you have? Does this even fit where you want to go now, right? Maybe it did in 2020, but we're almost 2024 now. Is this something where your institution is even going? And if not, just write it off now, right? And move on.
Yeah. And I think that overbuying, overspending in that 2020, 2021 period, now we're seeing the inverse of that because the rules of the game, if you will, have changed. Coming back to your point of recruiting, the game has changed. And if we flip this around, what is the perspective now from the fintechs selling into the space? Where are the patterns of their conversation now today in the present?
Yeah, I think, in conversations I'm having, because I kind of do both sides, right? And I'm helping fintech scale. So the conversations I'm having is more around getting into their budget cycle for their next project. It's not something that's going to be an immediate sale today, but it's opening the door so that, hey, here's what's out there. Here's where you said you're going. Here's things to help you on that journey. Let's work together over the course of the next quarter, 4 or 5 months ish, to work into this project, knowing that you're going to need it. And that seems to be doing okay so far, right? Because there's still a need, and some of it is even replacing maybe human touch or humans doing the work with something. There's still a cost to that, right? And helping them understand what that cost is, or it could even be replacing a really expensive software with a software that's less expensive, that actually does more for you, easier to implement. And so you're just replacing costs at that point and lowering costs. But those are the conversations that folks should be having. You're seeing a lot of fintechs that are scaling back on their headcount. The other thing that I think is to be noted is, sales cycles are taking so much longer now. It used to be 6-8 months for a mature fintech, in the down market sub maybe 5 billion space, anywhere from 12 to 18 months in the mid market, and then 18 plus. We'll shift all of that 6 to 12 months now, just given what we went through this year. And so that's the angle when I'm talking with institutions. I don't need the immediate sale. Yes, we all want the immediate sale. It's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is make sure that we're on your roadmap. And what does that roadmap look like? Let's talk about it, collaborate about it together, right? Let's have this partnership so that when 3 6 months from now, when that roadmap item comes up, I'm already positioned, you're already budgeted, and boom, now we have the sale.
Yeah. And I think that it's a changing of expectations once again to the new reality, resetting the expectation. And we're seeing the same thing. And, I think that's where, if we rethink what the opportunities are, it might not be the immediate sell, but it's something that I wrote about in Banking on Digital Growth. It's about playing the role of the helpful and empathetic guide. So if you're a fintech selling into the space, there's still an opportunity to create value, to guide your key stakeholders that you're working with internally within a financial brand by providing them not just the quote unquote product or the technology, but perhaps the expertise that they need to facilitate the conversations internally with other key stakeholders. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on, right? I think that's super important. Resetting the expectation is a perfect way to say it, because before, expectations were such, but we've shifted it, given the economic cycle we're in. So the one thing I like to do is make my internal champion look like the hero, right? And you can't do that unless expectations are set. And then that it goes back to that, internal champion is going to make you look like, an amazing account exec once to their leadership, and boom, your partnership is really solid at that point. So
yes, and when you think about where we're at, but also where we're going, say, over the next 12, 24, 36 months, I know that can feel like an eternity, particularly 36 months based upon what we've experienced over the last 36 months. But when you look ahead towards the future, what are you feeling most hopeful and excited about through this lens of collaboration here?
I see a lot of generational shift in the institutions, right? And you're starting to see the next generation kind of come into their positions of leadership, and I'm very bullish on that, because they are the generation that is open to the change and looking at the next kind of innovative thing to take them to that next level. And so I think, and then on top of that too, we're coming into an election year, which is always fun for financial institutions and fintechs, right? So, I'm very, very optimistic of what's to come. I think you're going to see this AI game really take shape. So, the companies that are already adapting to it, they're not taking their time to get there. You talk about crypto. I think is here to stay, whether people like it or not. And you're going to see a lot of, bad projects leave, but you're going to be left with some good stuff. And so those are the types of cool technologies coming that when you look back to the early 90s and you think about, this internet was like this fad, right? And it's never going to last. And now look at where we're at, right? And I think that's what we're starting to see in bank. I've been in this since 2006, and we couldn't take pictures of checks to deposit back then. And now look at how we can move money around pretty easily. We're still behind though, as an industry. And I think this next 36 months, even into like really the next decade, is going to be really transformative.
Yep.
And the folks coming into these positions of power are the right generation, I feel like, to really accelerate that, and really benefit all sides. And I think this is where fintechs can really start to set themselves apart now, right? Is, do you have a solution that the industry needs? And are you a good partner that's going to collaborate to make this thing better?
It's interesting that you bring up the 90s and the internet. That's something that I've been working with a lot of boards and executive teams within financial brands. And I asked the question, well, how old were you in 1994? And I want you to write that down on a sheet of paper, and I want you to hold it up. And everyone kind of gets a little squeamish. No one wants to talk about their age and whatnot. But I'm like, no, this is important, because how old you were in 1994 is directly influencing your thinking today. Because, so for example, right, I was 13 in 94. So right in middle school, right as the internet was about to take off, I grew up with this thing, and have seen the evolution. Then sometimes in the room you have someone who is maybe 20, 25. So they were college, starting their career in 94. So they didn't have that same type of contextual experience. And they obviously they learned it along the way, but it was from a different perspective. Then you had someone who was maybe 30, 35, further along in their career in 94. Then you also have people in leadership who are maybe 5 in 94. And
You're right.
maybe they weren't even born yet, and they've had a completely different experience than even myself. And I think because this is important, because you mentioned AI. So right now, everyone is abuzz about this AI thing. And people back in the 90s thought the internet was a quote unquote fad. And there's film, there's video that shows this. And I've done a podcast episode on this. I don't think the vast majority of people have any clue as to the exponentiality of what is coming through AI. It's going to take what has transpired over the last 30 years, compress that down into maybe 3, 5, 10 years, and the output or the result is going to be 10 times bigger than that. And the human mind is a linear mind where the technology is exponential and it's creating this gap. And I think too, that's also, there's a lot of fatigue around this, not quote unquote decision fatigue, but just change fatigue. There was the COVID experience, and then there was the financial crisis, and then there's this whole AI thing. And it's just people from talking to CEOs and leaders and their teams, I'm starting to find a lot of them are starting to feel very, very tired right now with what they have experienced. What would your recommendation be? Because once again, you kind of grew up in some of this and you've experienced changes and downturns as well. What would your recommendation be for those who are watching or listening who might be feeling a little bit tired, might be feeling a little bit burned out, to navigate these coming years?
Yeah, I think, something that's super important. I just had this kind of conversation with the $350 million bank down in Kentucky last week where, they're a generational family owned institution, right? And they've got this technology board now, but it's all internal people. And I think, it's great to have that, but I think you need to have fresh eyes on this because there's a lot to know. And you're running an institution, you don't have the bandwidth, you're tired, right? You're exhausted from all this change. But if you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, you just have to surround yourself with the smart people that come back and tell you and report to you, and you have to trust those people, right? Yeah. And so I think it's important for folks who've been doing this for a long time and they've seen all the change. It's okay to be tired. That's normal, right? Sure. Arm yourself with the people. Find yourself a good maybe technology board as a subset even of your board. That can do this heavy lifting for you and then come give you the cliff notes, right? You don't need to be the expert in this now, right? You made it throughout your career. You're on top of the world, right? You're the CEO, whatever. That shouldn't be what your main concern is, right? Your main concern should be understanding how we're going to grow the bank, navigate through these tough times, the credit crunch, all that stuff. While I have people that I trust that are going to come back to me and tell me, the technologies in the industry that are there to help us achieve those goals, right?
That's a fantastic point, because if you think about healthcare, you can Google things now and self-diagnose, and right. Odds are you're going to be dying in a week with yourself or your misdiagnosis. But the same is true with technology within FinServe. You can go out and you can do a lot of Googling, but because of the exponential nature and the number of new logos coming on, it can feel extremely overwhelming. But that's where, when we come back to healthcare, working with a specialist who has deep level knowledge, deep level expertise around the cardiac system or the pulmonary system or the urinary system. Right. That's why there's that deep level expertise, so that you don't have to be, and it's impossible to be the expert within all of these different fields of study. So I really appreciate that perspective. As we wrap up here, I always like to send those who are watching or listening off with something small that they can apply today so that they can begin to get momentum and progress on their journey of growth. What would be the one thing that you would recommend, something small that they could do to either establish or begin to explore potential future collaborations going forward into the future?
Yeah, I think the key is to ask for help, right? There's a ton of help out there. There's a lot of smart folks out there, smarter than I. Just we're out here. We're here to help. We're an ear, bounce stuff off your ideas off our heads. Let us help you in your journey. And quite honestly, I talk to a lot of banks, and I don't build banks, right? Because I'm passionate about this industry and transforming it. That I just like to know what's going on and help them understand what other things are there and make those connections. And
Right.
so, any takeaway that I would give is call us, reach out to us on LinkedIn, ask us for our opinion. There's enough of us in this world that we're all here to help, and ultimately start building those friendships, so that you have a solid ear to talk to when you need it.
That's a great point. You don't have to go. You mentioned journey before and the hero's journey. You don't have to take this hero's journey alone. There are plenty of those who are ready, willing, and want to help. They have a servant's heart. They care about elevating this industry because this is such a important industry. This is an industry that has the ability to truly transform the lives of people in the communities that these banks and credit unions are serving.